Okay, so tonight I'm going to try to broach on a subject that I've been not avoiding, but not knowing how to get after for a long time. I've been threatening for over a year to make a video on sizing and on the dreadful click. The click is something that you hear about when you hang around bench resters. And it has to do with the fact that you will open your gun up, and at the top of the stroke, this is a short stroke and it's not clicking, there's nothing in it, but at the top of the stroke it clicks. I'll show you one in a little while. But the problem with the subject is that it's big and it has a lot of different facets, and it's going to require me to do something that I'm chary about, reluctant about. The name of this project is called Opinions by Al, and in it I share my opinions on a lot of things. The problem with this resizing thing, the problem with this click thing, the problem with the things I'm going to talk about tonight is that they're not opinions. They are absolute inviolate fact, and I'm just going to lay it out there like that. It's going to piss a lot of people off. It's been days since I was on the internet arguing with somebody about this particular subject, literally days, but it's never more than a few days between times, because sizing and case growth and the click and primary extraction and these things are easily quantified, well understood, but unfortunately we've got a whole bunch of redneck males, some of whom produce fixes for these various problems. Take the click alone. There's 3 different people, 3 different ways, 3 different methods, and these guys tend to argue that their way is right. And it's just dorky. It is completely beyond the ken, so I don't know how to approach it without being rude to somebody. So, after all the grunting and the opining and the bootless speculation is over, in simple fact, it's very easy to keep guns from sticking, clicking, hanging up. But now, there's a bunch of things tied together here. This is the real reason I've stayed away from doing this. I don't like to rush. I don't like to puke a whole bunch of information out without it tying together, because I have a tendency to teach a lot at work and with people, and I find that just overloading information quickly can cause people to glaze over. I'm bad enough at making you glaze over as it is. So I'm going to start with something called primary extraction. And to show you where I first ran across, sometimes this works to share a story with how I ran across a situation and what it meant to me. I'm not a gun show guy, but I was at a gun show 25, 30 years ago. I don't know, a while back when these guns came out. And I was walking through a gun show, and at this time I had built a few really nice stocks. I was a poor kid who had grown up in a gun environment. I could whittle a mean piece of wood, and someday when I was rich and famous, I was going to own one of those nice pieces of woods that I had carved on from Calico and Fajan and the people back in the day. But I hadn't at this point. So I'm walking through this gun show, and I see this piece of wood up ahead of me, and I walked up to the guy and I said, "Is that for sale?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Okay, I will take it." And he was confused. He said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "I want that piece of wood for my own reasons. I don't have..." Now, it's funny because my tastes have changed. I wouldn't buy this piece of wood today. I can't even get it to shine. If I take it outside, you're going to find that it is tiger stripe from end to end, and it's got a depth and it's got a richness, but it's very, now in my mind, it's bland. It's uniform. It's got 1 or 2 knots. Now I buy stuff that's got, oh man, black streaks and cracks and nah, not really, but I look for an entirely different kind of character. But the point is, I walked up, I said, hey, I want that. Oh, okay. And I'm dressed like I am. I probably look like more of a bum then than I do now, because he expects somebody to walk up in a business suit. Obviously, I'm not going to do that because I'm not that kind of a person. So I walked up and said I'd like it. And he takes it down, and I spun it around and said, yep, it's consistent everywhere. He said, what do you know about these Coopers? And I said, nothing. I don't even know what it is. I have heard of Dakota Arms. I have heard of Cooper. I have a friend who's got a really cool 22, and it's got a nice hunk of wood on it too, and he paid a stupid amount of money for it, and it shoots almost as good as a Marlin. This is prior to 10/22 days. So anyway, as he's looking for the box, he said, do you know what it is? And I said, no, it's a 22-250. Interesting. Okay, well, I don't need a 22-250. It doesn't matter to me, but I will varmint the crap out of it. And I did. I took this thing out on the varmint patch. I learned to load, because this was sold at the time as a quasi-custom, super accurate, some name brand barrel, some name brand. Frankly, it's a piece of crap. The trigger is terrifying on it. It can't be done. But worse than that, it has no primary extraction. This is the first gun that taught me what primary extraction is. Here's a fired 22-250 case from the box that this gun built. When I say built, I mean exactly what I said. The gun built this case. It was fired in this gun. Now I open it up. Oh, it didn't stick badly that time. I might have to grab a different one out of the box. There we go. Okay, it had to be turned in there. The gun's also crooked. Evidently I had it in the same way it was lined up. But I can't count the number of times I've beat this thing open. I've learned not to, because right here, on a bolt action firearm, those of you who know, and this is another thing, I'm not going to spend too much time explaining some of this stuff. Those of you who get it, get it. Those of you who know. Those of you who don't, go do some research. Trust me, that gap right there is not supposed to be there. This gun is so freaking far out of time, it has no primary extraction. It just doesn't. To get that case out, I have to put it on the floor, run a cleaning rod down into it, and tap that case out, because I don't want to break this gun. But they would never fix it. I don't want to go into a bad mouthing on the internet thing here, but trust me, there's been changes. The company's been sold 3 times, and during the course of it, this particular Model 22 is not something anybody is going to warranty, guarantee, or in any way look at ever again. So, it's a kind of pretty, horribly unuseful piece of junk with a bad trigger. I still use it sometimes on the varmint patch, but frankly I get so sick and tired of beating the bolt open that I just don't anymore. So it languages in the safe. It's a safe queen. But I wanted to show you that that's one kind of, I guess we could call it click. That's just a complete lack of primary extraction. Primary extraction is an angled area right here that you open the bolt and it cams. It's a primary extraction cam, and it yanks, it pops that cartridge case out of the chamber. Now, hopefully I get time, and that's why I've avoided this issue for so long. I need to show you why the 22-250 case is particularly prone to sticking. But first I want to show you an actual classic click. In one of my latest videos, I was testing my new drop port that I'm so happy with, and I noticed these cases. This is one of 3 cases that have been fired 20 times a piece in 5 different chambers, guns, barrels. By now it might be 7. I noticed I was fighting a little bit when I was shooting this particular gun, so I went and grabbed it. I'm going to throw a case in here, and I think, yes, there it is. That case is stuck in there. It doesn't want to come out. But because this is a Jim Borden gun, so the timing is primo, this has a perfectly functional cam, and as I bring it up, that's called the click. That case is stuck. Now that I've got it to bust out, oh no, I didn't either. It pulled off. Shoot. Well, that's a different story. It just got a 473 bolt face. And it has the correct extractor in it, but that case is actually stuck in there. I'm going to have to drop it out. It's not bad either. But this is something that, totally separate issue, has to do with the fact that I've got two different extractors for this setup. But that's the classic click, which means when you open it up, the case is stuck. It hasn't released itself from the chamber walls, and you have to click it to pop it open. So now that I've illustrated what the classic clicking is, I'm going to try to do this with pictures and no props. Well, I'm going to probably end up having to use one prop. But I'm going to try to explain to you why this happens. There is no mystery here. There is nothing but clear, salient facts about why guns click and how to keep them from clicking ever again. Number one, you buy a gun that has a primary extraction cam that functions. Remington 700s are notorious for having non-functional extraction cams. There's a whole closet industry, not a closet industry, there's an industry. There are 8 people that I've used before to put Remington bolt handles back on or retime. When I say back on, you can buy a brand spanking new Remington 700 and you've got to go have the bolt handle torn off and put back on to get your bolt timing correct. And one of the things in that bolt timing is primary extraction, to get the primary extraction cam to work. Now, we have to understand why cases stick. And this is where things get really, really, to me, funny, but it's not funny. There is so much stupid out there in the world that sometimes we have to combat it. Somebody will come on an inner tube forum somewhere and say, my cases are sticking, and then they'll show pictures of the cases, and they might have rings on them, they might have swells on them, they might be shiny, they might be not shiny, they might be... And people will come on and they will offer some of the most ludicrous and stupid advice as can be found anywhere on the internet on any subject. I've seen guys say, look at the rings on your neck. Maybe you need to change your sizing effect on your neck because your neck is hanging up. That, frankly, is retarded. Never on this planet, never in the history of the world, will a neck on a case ever hang up. Here, I'll pick a bigger one. It's just a bigger case. The neck will never hang up. I've got cases that had been mismatched so badly that they were jammed and they still don't hang up. And if they do hang up, the back is back here flopping and you can feel that it's hung up here like a little bulldog that's jumped up and grabbed onto a branch, or a snapping turtle hanging on a shovel handle. It's just so that's enough. I've heard people say, oh, the shoulders are hanging up. I'll see people now and again. I probably have cases kicking around here that have got rings on them because I've got cases that have been fired 50 times in a chamber that's never been polished, and sometimes they'll show rings. People will say, oh, it's hanging up on the rings. All absolute speculation and garbage. No. Never, ever, ever, ever do cases hang up in any way except that for some reason, the way a case is designed to function, the pressure hits, the case pops open and forms a gasket seal. This is a good case to have because even though it's a case I didn't even fire because I don't own a 300 Win Mag, it's just kicking around here. You'll notice there's a nicely blackened section here, which means that this thing popped open and the gas only got down there about 1/8 of an inch before it sealed right off. Now this is an old case, probably picked up at a range, so that's corrosion on there, but the corrosion occurs at that area where the gas slightly scorched the end. Then the case sealed, did its job, and then it relaxed back, because that's what brass does. It exhibits something called spring back. So pop, then it releases. All of this releases. All of this releases. All of this releases. The only place a normal case can hang up is right back in here. Period. Now there's one exception to that rule, and that goes back to that 22-250 I showed earlier. Not only does that particular gun not have an extraction cam, but the 22-250 case is one case that is so misshapen that it actually exhibits a characteristic that no other case that I've ever worked with does. I've never fired the 250-3000 very much. But the 22-250 has so much case taper that it can actually hang in a chamber and not want to release because of the tapered sidewalls. Anybody who's been around machines or is a machinist understands what a Morse taper is. It's a taper with a relief area on the end, and it fits inside of another taper, and it's a locking mechanism to lock chucks and things. And a tapered piece of metal popped into another tapered piece of metal will produce a friction lock in here that is better than a screw lock. The 22-250 is so tapered that it can actually hang up even when the gun has proper primary extraction cam function. But that's rare, and that's only the 22-250. Most other cases are much more parallel. They've got a less, well, let's keep the shoulder out of it. Suffice it to say that they pop open, they release, and the case comes out. Now, back in the day, Parker O. Ackley came up with a whole improved series of cases, and all he did with these cases was he brought the sidewalls out more into parallel, widened the shoulders, got away from this 22-250 look. That's called an improvement. He improved them by bringing them out, and then he put a 40-degree shoulder on. And his cases will absolutely unlock from the chamber no matter what. You cannot get them to stick anywhere on their dimension except that there is one section of the case that tends not to spring back. This is where I'm going to bring my prop into play. You're going to notice right here that we have a thick piece of material right here at the back. And that thick piece of material, I'm going to color it black because I have this prop in my hand anyway. It may or may not be useful. It may be really boring. Okay, yeah, it's really boring. It didn't work. A slug like that is no different than a chunk of silly putty. You take a chunk of silly putty, and if I were to make this into a balloon and blow it up, it would exhibit spring back. But if I just set it like this and go bonk, it doesn't spring back. Picture a piece of lead. Well, brass is the same way. Brass, this whole case is formed from that little slug right there. They start with something called a button, they drop it into a hole, and they start hammering and annealing, and they squeeze this whole case up around out of that slug. So, the inside of a case has got an area. I'll try to draw this to scale. That is very thick. This area right here, it's got a flash hole in it, but it's very thick. This area right here exhibits no spring back whatsoever. You smash this and you widen it and a few things happen, all tied together. When this smashes and widens, that hole right there gets a little bigger. All of these things are inextricably linked. As pressure bleeds in and expands this case head, that hole gets bigger, the primer pockets loosen, and this case head expands, and when the case head expands and gets wider, it starts to hang up inside the case, and no amount of sizing can resize. Now, the reason there are a bunch of tools out there called ring dies and small base dies and whatever is because they'll come down just an extra few thousandths and they will knock out. This will be swollen up big and then it'll bulge back, and this little area right here will be hanging up, and you can bring a die down just a wee bit tighter and bump this in. But the bottom line is when it starts hanging up down here on the case head, anywhere below in this thickened brass, anywhere in this section, it can't be resized. So the real fix for the click is to make the chamber enough bigger that this brass can never get involved. This is hard because my camera, this brass, if we can keep the head brass, the actual non-sizable brass, from ever being involved. Now, the reason that it's become such a problem is through the years we get guys making smaller and smaller chambers. They make something called SAMI minimum or match chambers, because most of your match ammunition out there, in the common sense of match, has never been fired. It's made by a company to do match competition, standing on your hind feet and barking at the moon, and it's not a reloading thing at all. So you buy these cases that fit your chamber quite well so that they shoot well, but then when you go to reload them, you find out that this head section starts to swell up. So instead of making this head section starts to, boy, I walked right out of the camera. Once this head, this is a belted mag, so it's a bad one to use. Here's another one. Once this head section starts to swell up and get in the way, you're toast. So the way to get rid of the click is to make your chamber slightly bigger, and then buy dies that run down far enough that they take care of this little section right here. You know, and it's sad because I just got to the point, this is why I've been so reluctant to do this. But suffice it to say, I've got seconds to finish up with the fact that this portion of the case at the head can't be resized. So make your chambers big enough to keep it out of the way, and run your dies down far enough to get rid of this little area here where the two flare together, and you can forever eliminate the click that is present in a lot of multiply fired cases in tight chambers.